You talk about, there's a lot of talk about how can we get more Black people to the church? How can we get young African Americans to the church? It's real simple. Go to them.
Yes. Today, we took a little bit of a change in our series, and we're not interviewing from my office back home in Somerset, New Jersey, but we are here at St. Nicholas Greek Orthodox Church and National Shrine, where I serve as the assistant priest. Today, we have an incredible guest with us, Mr. John Wetzel. For the past, I would say, 30 years, John has been a counsel not only to Congress, but also the United States Senate when it comes to prison reform and aid towards young men. John, welcome to our show, and thank you for being with us today.
I can't tell you what an honor it is to be here and be with you. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Well, let's begin with our first question. John, please share with our audience your background in the prison industry and how you've been able to impact the lives of young Black and Latino men in the state of Pennsylvania.
Yeah, so most people get into corrections or the prison industry by accident. And that's how I got into it. I did it, started part-time when I was a college football player. I stayed at Bloomsburg University, and I worked at a small county jail in Lebanon, Pennsylvania. I would actually work summers, and then in the spring, I'd work one weekend. I'd work 2 double shifts, and then I'd have money for the rest of the month. And then I actually quit school my last semester after football season, and went to work as a full-time correctional officer. At some point, I grew up, went back to school, and got my degree, and then my career took off from there. So I learned it from the boss. Spent 9 years as an officer, and then worked my way up progressively from a counselor to running a treatment department in Reading. And actually, Reading is where I met Father Demetrius Nikolodakis, and that's where I found Orthodoxy. He was actually doing a Bible study in there, and eventually led me to the faith. I'm a little slow at things, so probably 4 or 5 years later, I joined the church. But then after that, I went to be a county warden in Franklin County in Chambersburg, Pennsylvania. And then about 9 years later, I was tapped by Governor Corbett as the second youngest Secretary of Corrections in the history of Pennsylvania at 41.
Wow, thank God.
Amen. I spent 11 years as Secretary of Corrections, a great team. Probably what we're known most for over that time frame. We reduced the population. When I took over, the population was growing by 1,500 incarcerated people a year over 24 years. And I left it with 27% less people. So it's 51,757 at our apex. By the time I left, which was 2021, we were down to 35,000.
That's incredible work.
And 70% of that was in the non-white population. Because what we find when you're doing reform work or really just making the system work better, when you target reforms to improve the system, what happens? Discretionary decisions drop out, and all of a sudden, the reforms disproportionately impact the group who was disproportionately negatively impacted by the legislation that was biased. So it's been pretty gratifying. Fortunately, all through partners and partnerships,
Thank God. So you were introduced to the Orthodox faith through a Bible study. Can you please share with our viewers a bit more about that?
Yeah, so I think this is when I was the head of treatment at Berks County. I was in charge of the chaplaincy.
Okay.
And we had a chaplain called Tutela who was either converting or had just converted and started having a Bible study for jail staff at his house.
Wow.
And I remember the first time I met Father Demetrius, I'm going to call him Father D, in this Bible study. And I grew up Lutheran and went to church. I mean, if we went on vacation, we found a Lutheran church. Like I went to church and he was doing the Bible study, but sharing aspects of the Bible that I never heard, didn't even hear stories about. I guess I would call that tradition now, right? But I didn't know anything about it. And I was fascinated, intellectually curious. And then I went to his church. And this was early on in his tenure there. And Greek Orthodox Church. And probably, it felt like 3/4 of it was in Greek, but probably half. So that was a little disconcerting. But I was telling him, I had lunch with him yesterday. I was telling him the thing I remember from my first visit to his church was the light. So, like it was like this golden, I can see it. I can't remember much about the service, but it was like that light. And then that was in, I think, 99 or 2000. 5 years later, I was down in Chambersburg, Pennsylvania. I was the county warden. Now I have 4 daughters, so I was looking for a church. And so I was visiting different churches. A small town. Some would say I'm a kind of a big person now. Right? So I was looking for a church to be in church for a Sunday and not be the warden, you know? And Pat came down to visit me and he said, stop messing around. Go to the Orthodox Church. There's the Orthodox Church in St. Mary's. Yeah, and I said, I don't know anybody in the church, and churches are scary places. I know I run prisons and jails and ran death row, but churches are a lot scarier than churches in Capitol buildings, legislators. That's the scary stuff. So he said, stop messing around and go there. So I said, I don't know anybody. The next day, I mean, you will not be surprised. I'm sitting in my office late, and some lady shows up and knocks on the door and says, can I donate? We have socks and toothpaste. Can we donate it for the incarcerated people? And I said, sure, I'll take it. Where are you from? She said, St. Mary. Church. I'm slow, but not that slow. And I went in and Father Ted Pulcini, who's just the best. I mean, I'm so glad I learned the faith from him because professor from Dickinson, all kinds of stuff. But I remember that first liturgy. I remember the petition where he prayed for civil authority.
Right.
And I just it's up. So I went up at the other side. What did it charge you? Slow down. And, it's been ever since. But thank God, I wouldn't have got through, 10 years, 9 years in the county board, and 11 years running the sixth largest system in the country, longest serving Secretary of Corrections in Pennsylvania, and Corrections started in Pennsylvania, without spiritual fathers like him and Father Demetrius, and the prayers of holy men, they say, because it's difficult work.
It's an incredible story. We talked about this briefly in the past about the importance of Black male prisoners, Latino prisoners being able to see images of the lives of the saints in the Orthodox Church while they're in prison. With your experience being a former warden and having some experience working with Orthodox prison ministry, could you please share with us that importance? Because I know personally, doing the work in urban missions and being able to minister to young men that are going through those issues. And once a young Black male gets put into the system, the first targets, as far as religion is concerned, that reach out to them and touch them while in prison are the Nation of Islam, Sunni Islam, and the Black Israelite movement. How do you think the Orthodox faith, as far as our work with missions and evangelism, even in the prison system, can be more effective with young Black men being able to see iconography of the saints of Africa?
Well, you have to go look for them first. I won't really do that.
Right.
I mean, no disrespect, as they say, but I think currently, or at least during my tenure, early on, I think in the formation of Orthodox Christian prison ministry, there was some focus around it. It seems most of the focus was finding Orthodox individuals in the prison, which is what about half a percent of America. So we would hope it's slightly less than that in prison, right? But I don't think we've made an effort, to do it. I think we all need, first and foremost, we need this relatedness or belonging. We need to feel connected to something.
Right.
Add that to prison where it's literally your life. I mean, you're locked up in a prison. Your relatedness or connectedness to other people is part of your survival tactics. So you're going to want to be connected. So to your point, yeah, it'd be great if they could learn or get access or when you think about seeing a Black saint, like I didn't even know Black saints exist. It's just not something we just assume the saints are what we see. I can't tell you the opportunity you have when somebody first comes incarceration. Like it's rock bottom. Right. And people are frequently looking for a faith, and it's an opportunity. I don't think it's, people say it's a challenge, and that's it. The challenge is making the commitment to get in there, get access. If in fact we are the true church, right? Then people will gravitate to it if we go to them and meet them where they're at. I think that's really the shortcoming with our approach around. I don't even know if you call it approach. I think you have to engage and be committed to it.
No, I'm really glad that you answered the question that way, because there has to be a purposeful intention how we missionize at every level. You just shared with me this past week, congratulations on your daughter graduating from college. And you just mentioned the importance of having sound parenting, especially the presence of a father in the life of children. Can you please share us with that, any of your experience growing up?
Yeah, I mean, when you look at this, the group we're talking about in particular, but just the import of males in the community. And when you look at getting a little broader in criminal justice policy and you look at the 80s and the tough on crime era, the crime bill, and those kinds of things, what we did is literally remove a significant portion of Black males out of the community. So we destabilized the lives of these young men. And I'm not saying that some of them should have been locked up. I'm not an abolitionist or anything like that. But we destabilized the lives of these young men. We haven't supplanted that with anything.
Right.
You know, and young black men need fathers.
Right.
You know, we can find fathers. Maybe we can get some of our fathers to get in those communities. You know, so that is first and foremost, and that need is going to be met somewhere, and that it's not just young men. Right. Our young ladies are in crisis. The structure has always been, right. It's been a father and a mother providing those two different perspectives and those two different skill sets to provide for the guidance and support, coupled with life in the community of the church. I mean, it's complicated to raise people, even if you're on the best path and your parents have done everything, and you're in church and all this stuff still goes wrong. Right. So imagine removing all those things that help you build pro-social supports and then go back. Right. Out in the world. And then we're surprised. Right. Again, I'm not saying we shouldn't hold them accountable. That accountability has to be love. Right. We have to tell them they're worth something. You know, we have to tell them they matter. They have a chance. Right. And absent that, if you have nothing to live for, you have nothing to live for.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Here at St. Nicholas, we always share the saying that we ought to lead with love in all things. This leads to my next question. We talked about this over lunch before, about how Black fraternities and sororities are an untapped resource within the community when it comes to mentoring. I share with myself being a member of Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated, and also about our mentoring efforts through Kappa League. Can you please share with our viewers how your intention is to begin to tap into that resource as you begin to mentor young men through coaching as a football coach, and even within your personal business?
Yeah, I think if you look at the lives of young Black men today, it's in crisis. Never been in bigger crisis. You look at urban education, it's never underperformed more. We have more kids dropping out in Philly. We saw a 30% reduction in the number of new kindergarten students. What does that project down the road, right? Kids need education and need systems, education systems that arm them with the tools, right? And we know young Black men who drop out of school, the lifetime likelihood of incarceration, young Black men who drops out of school, 70%.
Wow.
70%.
That's heavy.
And let me tell you, you look at schools and they've done a lot of research around schools. And I think this is fascinating. So you can tell how a school will perform on objective test measures based on asking the kids in that school 3 questions. Question number 1, do you feel safe? Question number 2, do you have an adult in the building who you consider a mentor? Question number 3, does an adult in the building believe in your success more than you do? So if those 3 things are all it takes for someone to be successful, shame on us. We're not taking 2 minutes, 2 days, whatever, out of your month, year, whatever, to cut back on TikTok time or something. Just spend a little time with kids, right. And so we need to look at groups that have good programs, good success, where you find successful men of color. It's not just men of color who can mentor kids, but we got to step up. And part of my thing is we have to step up. And so you look at coaching. Mm-hmm. I mean, in my life, it wasn't for coaches. I mean, I was adopted and had a nuclear family, but not a nuclear family looked like me or knew anything about me, Mm-hmm. So I point to coaches. Brian Scriven was a grad assistant at Bloomsburg, who's now the superintendent of that school district. Oh, wow. So I can't, even in my situation, I can't tell you how important, that was. So yeah, we have to get involved in life. So you look at coaches, you got people coaching all this. You look at fraternities. What other groups do we have where a lot of Black men get together for pro-social causes, there's no cause we should be focusing on behind young black. Start with that, and your little sub cause with them, because I think the the amount of effort we need to change this is individual.
Right.
And I think sometimes we look at it and we go, oh, it's insurmountable. What are we going to do? Start with one. Right? Start with one. Each one, teach one, whatever little buzz phrase you want to use. But there's a crisis, and sitting around and talking about it, and we should do this, and we should do this. No, do something.
Right.
Yeah.
This is awesome. I recently watched your video on you speaking to Congress about the need for certain changes and reform within the prison industry. It's incredible seeing, regardless of the fact of being a black male, but also an Orthodox Christian, having that presence in Washington. Can you please share with our viewers the importance of taking the soundness of our faith and using that determination to impact change in our nation and country for the betterment of the entire community?
Well, I think we started talking about tradition.
Right.
It's a good like we know that the world does not work if we just seek solutions in the world.
Right.
I mean, it's never been. There's never been a time where we've been in crisis as a world that the solution has come from the world.
Right.
So if you're a guy like me who is naive enough, dumb enough to think that my job is to change the world, in my case, it isn't community safety. I can find it broadly beyond corrections, but if I am going to change the world, then I have to cover all my bases. I have to build an organization that does that. So part of my organization has to be the church.
Right.
There has to be. I mean, there's an answer, right? When you look at the needs of these kids who come in, and again, spend a lot of time, and when you look at anger and the things that are interfering with them living a life, it's the same thing we deal with.
Right.
Like, if you're black in America, you're pissed off. Excuse language. This way, I'm sorry on that one. But you are angry, and to the extent that you're performing well, it's because you've learned to control your anger.
Right.
You keep getting more anger. Don't walk out of here today and something will happen. And it'll be because I had more melanin in my skin than someone else does.
Right.
Right? Fortunately, I've had people, sometimes with a hug, sometimes a little rougher than a hug, help me understand how to manage myself. Right? But I will tell you, you can imagine the kinds of things in the job I had that you had to deal with, the unthinkable things. If I would only try to get through those, focusing on whatever, deep breathing or something, without the spiritual underpinning, but it's beyond that. The church, the tradition, the books, it gives us lessons on how to manage ourselves so we can help other people. I don't see how you can separate the two, quite frankly. I don't see it.
Thank God. John, you've had incredible spiritual parentage in your life since being introduced to the faith. You have Pat, you have Father D, a mutual friend and brother of ours, Father Paul Abernathy. Can you please share with us how Father Paul has made such a significant impact in your life and the way you carry out your word?
Father Paul is everything to me. Matter of fact, one of the things I'm most excited about is the fact that I'll be working with Father Paul. We're getting ready to do some work out where he's at in Pittsburgh.
Right.
And part of the work will take us around this group he's working with.
Mm-hmm.
So, actually, I became Orthodox in 2005 on Lazarus Saturday, and it feels like yesterday in some ways. And I was in Antiochian Archdiocese with our bishop, His Grace, Bishop Thomas, who happens to be Father Paul's cousin.
Right, good friend of mine.
So when the bishop, he said, "You got to meet my cousin."
Right.
No disrespect. I was the secretary. I wasn't sure it was, I wasn't sure who Father Paul was. So I wasn't in a hurry. He wasn't Father Paul. As a matter of fact, he was subdeacon.
Okay, Paul.
And so I popped in. He talked about this program, Focus Pittsburgh. And a lot of people, when, my budget was $3 billion, I had 16,000 employees. It was a big job, So a lot of people say, "Oh, I'm doing this, I'm doing that."
Right.
So I popped in and on a Friday, and there is Subdeacon Paul along with a bunch of Duquesne football players holding lunch bags for kids for the weekend. And And he was doing it. And here's the thing, here's the brilliance of what he did that I didn't even understand. I'm understanding it now. You talk about, there's a lot of talk about, well, how can we get more Black people to the church? How can we get young African Americans to the church? It's real simple. Go to them.
Yes.
Go forth and baptize them, right? So what he did is he started in this community. I think this is the key for this kind of work. You meet them where they're at.
Right.
You need to go in there with some plan. We're going to do this. We're going to do that.
Right.
We're going to bring the cannons or something. No. I'm going to get in a community. I'm going to be part of the community. They're going to know me. I'm going to build relationships. I'm going to understand their needs.
Right.
I have to meet their needs. I will call them their earthly needs on this side, right? But they're not going to be successful. They're insufficient unless we meet their spiritual needs.
Absolutely.
When Father Paul did his TED Talk about the work he's doing, he talked about this concept. I thought it was brilliant the way he said it. So we can give people jobs and all kinds of stuff, but are they healthy enough to sustain success? And the question is, so that's about well-being.
Right.
See, we don't talk about what we talk about wellness and all this stuff you can't measure. Well-being, measurable health, measurable physical health, measurable mental health. Do you feel connected, or are you related to a community? Do you have the confidence to manage your life? And do you have the autonomy to make decisions on your own? These things are the things we all need to have a sense of well-being. So if we're trying to build in a community that's in crisis, that's trying to survive, and we want to help them, first of all, our goal should not be just to survive. It should be get them to thrive. So we can't thrive without a church and a community. So we went in there, and it was feeding meals. It was the meals for the kids. And this was right after, sometimes shortly after Obamacare. So there were some people who slipped through the cracks.
Right.
So it was a health clinic for people who didn't need it. I mean, if you're talking about starting an Orthodox mission, you wouldn't say, "Oh, we started health." But no, you know where they're at. And we were just out there for Pascha, and to see, I mean, he started with a reconciliatory workshop.
I remember
in a backyard,
Yeah.
right? And I remember him saying with his hat, he wears a hat. I remember him saying, "I'm here. We're not going to be here and give you some solution. We're part of the community."
Right.
And when I sat in there at Pascha and I see a church full of people, and you see, and the cool part is, like, you see converts, you see people who are inquiring, or people who are just curious, but it's a community.
Right.
And if someone has a need that needs to be met, they know where to go. And beyond that, quantifiable reduction in violence in the community and those kinds of things. So combining the worldly with the spiritual and going into these places and engaging and building that healthy community is the missing link to reducing crime, because you have to get people healthy. They need a hospital for their soul.
Absolutely.
That's what our churches are supposed to be. But you know what? They're not going to go out of the community. And there's some of our churches that they may not be welcome at.
That's true. We need to work on it.
Their churches are not welcome at. I mean, we joke about this, but there's times where I'm going to steal the chalice and stuff. I feel like I should put my badge around my neck. It's cool. But we have to be welcome. It has to start with the welcome. We have to start with the welcome. We got to welcome.
John, thank you so much for that. I was really excited when you started telling about your plan to build this mission parish, and you're working along with Father Paul. What are your concerns in building that mission? Because we have our viewers watching, and then many of them may be able to support you financially and through their prayers. Please, you have the moment before we close out the interview. Appeal to our viewers. Tell us what your intention is with this mission parish, and how can we help you out in the future?
Yeah. So what Father Paul built out there, St. Moses the Black, coupled with the Neighborhood Resilience Project. So that's the violence intervention piece. So I want to work on violence in central Pennsylvania.
Okay.
Right. And I have the violence part. We need a church, and we need a community that is welcoming, that's exciting. So we're looking to do that right now. I told you I was at St. Matthew's with Father Demetrius in Reading, Pennsylvania. So we're going to start kind of working with Father Demetrius and out of there, because Reading is a place I actually worked at the jail there for 9 years. A lot of the stories came from that place. So that's a community. So we're going to be looking at both places.
But what I know for a fact is we need a church tethered to a strategy targeting kids. Right now, they're in crisis, but also then what you build out from that. It's a pull strategy.
Right.
You put a positive, godly community in place that starts meeting the actual needs of the community. All of a sudden, what happens? It grows.
Right.
Because we're all drawn. It's the light I saw the first time I went to St. Mary's. It's the same light I saw when I was the first time I was in St. Mary's. That light draws us in, even if we don't understand it. I didn't understand it. I mean, 3/4 of the service or in Greek, I didn't understand it. It felt good. It felt good. So yeah, I'm really excited about it. I'm not someone to sit around and work. I spent most of my time working inside corrections. I'm excited to be able to get engaged with people before they get trapped in the system. That's like a spider web. But I can't do it without the church, quite frankly. And so between it's a high maintenance, I consider 4 now. I consider advisors because it's just complicated work. You know what I mean? And I don't know where we'll end up, but I wonder where the Spirit leads us. But I'm excited. I'm excited to partner with you to do it also. So.
As I am. Well, to our viewers, thank you again for joining with us. If you're in the Metro North, this June 19th, Wednesday, June 19th, we will be here at St. Nicholas National Shrine celebrating Juneteenth with a pan-Orthodox ecumenical service where John will be our keynote speaker. So if you're in the area, please join us as we pray and thank God not only for the freedom of African slaves here in the Americas, but most of all, the triumphs that Black Americans have made since their freedom from slavery here in America. This is not a shameless plug, but I like to plug Father Paul Abernathy's book, The Prayer of the Broken Heart. For any of you who have been at great concern in urban missions, you want to pick up a copy of this book. I support and love the work that Father Paul is doing in Pittsburgh. He's a dear friend and brother of mine. What he's doing there in Pittsburgh has been not only incredible, but inspiring, and we're looking to partner with him in the future and also implement some of those programs here in New York City and the Metro North. God bless you, and thank you for joining us again.